the veil that divided the sky. The first time anyone saw the veil, it was just after midnight, when the stars seemed to pause in their glittering dance and the moonlight took on a pale, almost brittle glow. People thought it was a trick of the atmosphere, a sudden formation of clouds stretched impossibly thin across the heavens. But it wasn't a cloud. It was a line. A perfect, straight seam running from one horizon to the other, splitting the night sky into two halves that didn't quite match. On one side, the stars shone with their usual brilliance. On the other, they were dimmer, stranger, arranged in constellations no one recognized. The difference was subtle at first, so subtle most didn't even notice. But as the hours passed, the two skies began to diverge more sharply, until anyone looking up would have sworn they were staring at two entirely separate worlds stitched clumsily together. I was standing on my roof when I saw it. The air was still, the night unusually quiet. Even the dogs in the neighborhood seemed unsettled, whining softly and refusing to look up. My phone camera captured the line easily enough, but every photo looked wrong, distorted, as though the veil couldn't be recorded without warping. By the time I posted the images online, I realized thousands of others were doing the same. The veil had appeared everywhere at once. No one had an explanation. In the days that followed, scientists flooded news channels with theories: atmospheric refraction, solar wind anomalies, light pollution quirks, but none of them stuck. It was too perfect a division, too clean. And then came the real strangeness. The events on the other side of the veil began to move out of sync with ours. People noticed that the clouds beyond the seam drifted in unnatural patterns, that meteors fell silently in that alien half of the sky without ever appearing on our side. On the fourth night, someone with a telescope reported seeing shapes, vast, black silhouettes passing behind the dimmer stars, as though something massive was drifting in that other sky. I became obsessed. I set alarms to wake me at different hours to watch it. Sometimes the veil shimmered faintly, like heat rising off asphalt. Sometimes it stood perfectly still, a cold scar against the heavens. My dreams grew strange. I began dreaming in two halves. On one side of my mind, I was here, in my familiar world. On the other, I was somewhere else entirely, beneath a sky that felt heavier, watching constellations I'd never seen before. And sometimes, in those dreams, I swore I could feel someone watching me from the other side. It was the seventh night when the first sound came through. I was on my roof again, leaning back in my old chair, when a low hum rolled across the air, not from the ground, but from above, from the direction of the veil. It wasn't mechanical. It wasn't natural either. It was layered, like dozens of voices humming in unison, too deep for words, yet carrying meaning I couldn't quite grasp. The sound lasted for exactly 63 seconds, then faded, leaving the night emptier than before. The next day, social media was ablaze with recordings. Every one of them sounded wrong in playback, warped and faint, like the microphones were fighting against some kind of interference. By the 10th night, people had started disappearing. It began with skywatchers, the ones who had been studying the veil most intently. A live streamer vanished in the middle of her broadcast. One moment she was speaking to the camera, the veil glowing faintly above her. The next, there was a blinding flash, and the feed cut to static. In another case, a man was found on his roof with his chair tipped over and his phone still recording, pointed straight at the seam in the sky. His expression was frozen in a kind of awe, eyes wide open, pupils dilated. He didn't respond when people called his name, didn't blink when they shined a light in his eyes. He just kept staring upward. The doctors called it a catatonic state. But no one could explain why. After 12 hours, he vanished entirely from his hospital bed without triggering a single security camera. Governments began restricting outdoor activity after dark. They claimed it was for public safety during unstable atmospheric conditions, but everyone knew it was the veil. Some cities even deployed drones to patrol rooftops, looking for violators. That didn't stop me. My curiosity had already rotted into obsession, and the idea of not watching the veil felt unbearable, like holding my breath until I passed out. On the 14th night, something changed. The seam widened. It wasn't dramatic, maybe the width of a human hand at arm's length, but it was the first time the veil had shifted physically. Through the widening slit, I could see movement, swirling lights, slow and deliberate, like the aurora but more precise, as though the patterns had purpose. I swear I saw shapes moving through them. Tall, thin figures that glided rather than walked, their outlines bending oddly, like they weren't made for our geometry. That was the night I heard the whisper. It wasn't in my ears. It was in my head, a faint, alien syllable that echoed against thoughts I didn't know I had. It didn't feel like language at first. It felt like recognition. Like something on the other side of the veil knew me, had always known me, and was now finally addressing me. The moment I felt it, my body went rigid, my heart pounding and painful, a rhythmic jolts. I couldn't move, couldn't look away. And for a moment, just a moment, I saw both skies at once. My familiar constellations on one side, and on the other, a sky that seemed deeper, older, hung with colors my mind couldn't name, and stars that pulsed like living eyes. When I blinked, the veil was back to its normal seam. The whisper was gone, but the feeling remained that somewhere out there, something had reached for me and brushed the edge of my mind. After that, I stopped sharing my observations online. Too many people were disappearing, and I didn't want to be next. But I kept watching. I kept recording in secret, and I began to notice patterns, tiny flashes along the veil that corresponded to the hums we heard on certain nights, as though they were signals. I started charting them, and slowly, painfully, I realized they weren't random. They were counting down. Tonight is the last number on my chart. The hum started an hour ago, louder than ever, vibrating through my bones. The veil is trembling, rippling like a curtain caught in a slow wind. The slit is wider now, wide enough that I can see whole structures on the other side, towers of impossible angles, glowing faintly, and shadows moving between them. The air feels charged, as though the world is holding its breath. Something is coming through. I can feel it, the way you feel a storm before you see lightning. My phone is recording, but I don't think it will matter. I don't think anyone will believe what's about to happen unless they see it with their own eyes. The hum has deepened into a vibration so low I can feel my teeth buzzing. The seam is splitting further, light pouring out so bright it drowns the stars. I can see them now, the figures I dreamed of, tall and thin, their movements slow but purposeful. Their faces, if they are faces, are nothing but smooth surfaces that reflect the wrong stars. One of them is turning toward me, and even from here, I can tell it sees me. I feel the whisper again, clearer now, threading into my thoughts, unraveling them like old cloth. It's not a voice. It's an invitation. The veil is almost gone. And I think, no, I know, that once it's open, it won't close again. The hum has become a roar. My vision is shaking. The light is too bright. My eyes are burning, but I can't. My ears rang with a frequency that wasn't just sound. It was pressure, a force that pushed through bone and thought alike. The air tasted like metal, sharp and electric, and every hair on my body stood on end. The seam, once no more than a faint scar across the heavens, now yawned wide enough to show me whole landscapes of the other side. The sky there wasn't black. It was something else. Not a color that belonged to Earth. More like the deep underside of an opal when you tilt it and see a shimmer that should not exist. The towers I'd glimpsed earlier were clearer now, spiraling structures of translucent material that seemed to bend light inward instead of reflecting it. They rose from a ground I couldn't see, vanishing into the alien haze, the surfaces crawling with shifting runes that pulsed in time with the roar. Shadows flitted between them, but they didn't move like shadows, more like the afterimage of motion, leaving faint streaks of themselves behind before the next flicker of form appeared. The tall figure that had turned toward me stepped closer, though step wasn't the right word. It advanced without crossing space, its position changing without the messy in-between of walking. It was closer now, close enough that the veil's shimmer outlined it against the light. It was thin, unnaturally so, with limbs like stretched wire and joints that bent just slightly in the wrong direction. Its face, or what I thought was its face, remained a smooth, glassy surface that reflected the alien stars behind it, but I could feel its attention fixed entirely on me. The whisper returned, stronger this time. It had shape now, almost language, though the words dissolved before I could grasp them. It wasn't trying to speak English, or anything human. It was pressing meaning directly into me, an idea bypassing the clumsy machinery of speech. The meaning was simple, but it made my stomach clench and my breath hitch. Asterisk asterisk you can cross dot asterisk asterisk. My grip tightened on the edge of the roof. Part of me, maybe the part that had been waiting every night since the veil appeared, wanted to step forward without thinking. The other part, the part that still believed in rules and consequences, screamed at me to turn away. But my legs felt heavy, as if the choice had already been made for me. Something stirred in the light behind the figure. More shapes, smaller than it, began to emerge. They didn't walk. They floated, or drifted, or simply were asterisk wherever they needed to be, appearing closer without traveling. Their forms were less defined, more fluid, like ink dispersing in water, constantly shifting yet always maintaining a humanoid suggestion. I realized, with a chill that sank deep, that their faces were also reflective, but not of the alien sky. They reflected our asterisk world. I saw rooftops in them, street lamps, trees swaying in a night breeze that didn't touch the other side. And here and there, I saw people faces frozen in mid-expression, eyes wide, caught in moments that seemed impossible to place. I thought of the live streamer, the man in the hospital bed, the missing. The hum dropped in pitch, becoming so deep it vibrated in my chest like a second heartbeat. The veil widened again. My vision wavered at the edges, the familiar shapes of my neighborhood bending and tilting toward that impossible opening. The alien sky bled into ours, stars from their side twinkling in patterns that didn't belong here. For the first time, I noticed something terrifying. The stars on our asterisk side were dimming. I backed away, my heel catching on the chair behind me. The figure in the veil tilted its head, not in confusion, but in patience, as if it knew I'd be back, no matter what I did now. The whisper pressed again, and this time, it brought with it a sensation that didn't belong to me. My mind was flooded with images, cities under alien skies, oceans made of liquid light, towers rising into clouds that swirled in geometric spirals. And through all of it, one idea, steady and insistent. We have always been here. Asterisk. A sudden crack split the air, sharp as lightning but without the flash. Somewhere far off, something heavy fell, maybe a tree, maybe a building. The light from the veil flared, and for an instant, I saw the asterisk in our world star. Not just the tall figure, but dozens of them, standing among houses, in streets, on rooftops, their glass faces reflecting only the alien side. The vision flickered, replaced by the empty quiet of my neighborhood, but I couldn't shake the certainty they weren't crossing over. They already had. The raw began to recede, but not like a sound fading into the distance. It was more like it was being pulled back inside, into whatever lay beyond that seam. The veil narrowed, the towers fading into the shimmer, the alien stars dimming until only the line remained, thin as a hair. The last thing I saw before it closed was a tall figure, still facing me, its head inclining in something like acknowledgement. When it was gone, the silence was unbearable. No crickets, no dogs barking, no cars in the distance. Just the faint ringing in my ears and the knowledge that something had changed. I stumbled inside, closing the door behind me like that could keep it out. My phone was still recording, but when I checked the footage, it was useless. Static and distortion, punctuated by faint flashes of light that didn't match anything I'd seen. Sleep didn't come easily, but when it did, the dreams were worse than any waking fear. I stood under the alien sky, towers looming over me, their runes pulsing in patterns that made my thoughts scatter. The tall figure waited, its glass face reflecting asterisk, but not as I was. In the reflection, I was already on its side, my body stretched thin, my eyes dark and starless. It reached out, not physically, but in a way I could feel in the marrow of my bones, and I woke with a taste of cold metal in my mouth. The following days blurred. News channels spoke in vague terms about observed anomalies and controlled research efforts, but it was clear they didn't understand. Or maybe they understood too well and were choosing their words carefully. Reports of missing people continued, though the numbers were always smaller on official lists than they were online. A few claimed to have seen the veil open again, but briefly, in places far from where it first appeared. I kept watching every night. I couldn't stop. Even when the sky was empty and still, I felt the weight of its absence like a missing tooth you can't stop probing with your tongue. My chart was useless now. The countdown had ended. But I knew it wasn't over. It had only been a beginning. On the 20th night, it came back. No warning this time, no gradual widening. One moment the sky was whole. The next, the seam was there, split wide enough that the alien light poured down in rivers. The hum was immediate, heavy and insistent. I barely had time to grab my phone before I felt it. The pull. It wasn't physical. My body didn't move, but my mind did, drawn toward that opening like a moth to flame. My thoughts stretched thin, the edges fraying, until it felt like I was standing in two places at once. On my roof, and under that alien sky. The figures were closer this time, their forms sharper, more solid. I could see movement beneath their reflective surfaces, shapes that didn't make sense, shifting and folding in ways my eyes rejected. The tall figure raised an arm, long, jointed wrong, and pointed at me. The whisper didn't come as words this time. It came as certainty. ***, you belong here. ***. I shook my head, but my vision wavered, my neighborhood bending and melting into those impossible towers. The stars above me rearranged themselves into constellations I didn't recognize, but somehow understood. I felt my feet move, not stepping, but crossing, each heartbeat pulling me closer to the edge of the veil. Somewhere in the distance, a voice screamed my name. I don't know whose voice it was. I don't know if it was even human, but it snapped something in me, and I staggered back. The tall figure tilted its head again, not in disappointment, but in that same patient acknowledgement. The hum softened, the light dimmed, and the veil narrowed once more. This time, though, it didn't vanish entirely. The seam remained, a faint, glowing line, hanging in the night like an open invitation. And I know, sooner or later, I will accept that. The seam never left after that night. It hovered there in the darkness like a scar that wouldn't heal, a hairline crack in the skin of the world, glowing faintly even through the clouds. I could see it from my window without stepping outside. At first, it was subtle enough that someone not looking for it might mistake it for a trick of the eyes, but I knew better. I stopped sleeping properly. My days became hollow hours between watching the sky. I barely ate. When I tried to focus on anything else, reading, music, even just walking, I'd feel my gaze drift upward, my thoughts circling back to the veil. It wasn't calling me in words, but in a constant hum beneath reality, like the faint rumble of a train you can't quite hear but feel in your bones. On the 27th night, I saw the first sign of them here again. Not the towers, not the alien light, just a figure. It stood at the end of the street under a broken lamp, tall and thin, its reflective face catching the glow of the seam high above. I blinked, and it was gone, but my gut told me it hadn't left. After that, they came more often. At first, it was only when I was alone, standing in the grocery store aisle and catching a reflection that wasn't mine in the freezer glass. Looking in the bathroom mirror and seeing a second figure behind me, faint as breath on glass, gone when I turned. Each time, the seam in the sky seemed just a little brighter afterward, like their visits fed it. The city had changed too. People were staying indoors more, even in daylight. The news was quiet, but rumors spread. Whole apartment buildings found empty in the morning, the locks still bolted from inside. Phones left recording hours of static, pets refusing to go near windows at night. By the 31st night, the pull was stronger than ever. My resistance was crumbling. I'd stopped telling myself I was just observing. I knew what was happening, what they wanted, and I was starting to want it too. That evening, I prepared without admitting to myself what I was doing. I set my phone to record again. I took a flashlight, though I knew I wouldn't need it, and I climbed to the roof one last time. The seam pulsed in the dark like a vein of molten light. The hum was louder now, a constant low note that rattled through my chest. As I watched, the crack widened, not fast, but steadily, like a mouth opening to speak. The alien light spilled through, spilling shadows that didn't match any object in my world. The tall figure stepped into view, just as it had that first night. This time, there was no patience in its stance. It raised one long arm, palm facing me, and the hum surged. The world around me dimmed, not just the lights, but the colors fading into muted shades, while the other side blazed with impossible hues. The whisper came, as inevitable as a heartbeat. Asterisk asterisk crossed up asterisk asterisk. I didn't move at first, my mind a whirlpool of fear and longing. But then I felt it, a tug in my skull, behind my eyes, like an invisible hook pulling me forward. My feet moved, my hands loosened from the roof's edge. I stepped closer. The veil's light wrapped around me, warm and cold at once, like plunging into water that was both ice and fire. The alien sky filled my vision, its stars swirling in slow spirals, rearranging themselves into patterns I somehow understood. The air on the other side shimmered like glass, bending the towers in strange ways, their runes pulsing faster as I approached. I could see them clearly now, the others who had crossed. They stood among the tall figures, their bodies changed, stretched, their movements fluid and silent. Their faces were reflective too, but I recognized them, snatches of the missing from news stories, neighbors who had vanished, faces I'd only glimpsed in passing. They didn't look afraid. They didn't look anything at all. I reached the edge. The tall figure lowered its hand, the hum subsiding into a deep, expectant silence. The veil shimmered like a curtain in a slow wind. I took one last look over my shoulder, my rooftop, my street, the faint outlines of a life that already felt far away. The air here seemed thinner now, like it couldn't hold me anymore. And then I stepped through. The moment my foot crossed, everything shifted. The ground beneath me was solid but strange, smooth and slightly warm, as if it remembered heat from a sun I couldn't see. The sky pressed down heavier, its alien constellations pulsing like the beat of a distant heart. Sounds came from all directions, deep resonances, faint whispers, a constant undertone of motion, as though the world itself was alive and breathing. The tall figure moved closer. Its reflective face no longer showed the alien sky. It showed me. My face was stretched thin, my eyes black voids with tiny glints of starlight. I reached up without thinking and touched my cheek. My fingers came away with the same glassy sheen. The whispers swelled, layered and countless, voices within voices, until they became a single thought that filled me completely. Asterisk asterisk, you are part of us now. Asterisk asterisk. And just like that, the pool vanished, not because I resisted, but because there was no me left to resist. The longing, the fear, the obsession, all dissolved into a vast, calm certainty. I was no longer watching the veil. I was on the other side of it, looking back. Through the seam, I could see my old world, the streetlights, the rooftops, a few scattered figures standing on their homes or in empty fields, staring upward. I knew some of them would come soon. Most wouldn't, but the veil would wait. It always waited.